All right, we're back for part 4. We're going to check out one of my favorite musicals of all time, and that's going to be Leonard Bernstein's West Side Story, which was a collaboration with Stephen Sondheim. Again, another huge name in the tradition of music theater. What makes West Side Story so amazing is that, well, there are a couple elements. Leonard Bernstein, as you guys have, you've had multiple assignment or a couple of assignments where he's been referenced. You got to watch one of his video lectures, and he's been a part of this presentation as well. He was a gifted educator and really thought very critically about music and what it was meant to do. And I think his staged production of West Side Story, which is essentially Romeo and Juliet, retelling, except it's set in a more current and contemporary times, has a lot of attention to the purely instrumental musical moments. All of the songs, much like in the Rodgers and Hammerstein kind of vein, all come out of a necessity from the characters to explain themselves, and also generally add to like our sense of character empathy. The opening of this is such a great sequence. The instruments here do a lot of what we call Mickey Mousing, and Mickey Mousing is when the image is tied directly to the musical sound. So you'll hear a lot of like, or you'll see a lot of stops in action, and then like it'll restart when the character begins moving again. And that technique where the sound is tied to the image is again called Mickey Mousing. You hear it a lot in cartoons. It has a very punctuated effect. But the music does all of the talking for us. We're going to understand over the next, for this choreographed opening sequence, that there are two rivaling parties that are at odds with one another. And you're going to see that conflict come to a head. And while the choreography adds to this heightening of energy, the thing that's really doing that and really pushing it forward is the music. So you'll notice that like our tempo starts out nice and slow, and eventually is going to become something that's much more quick and driven as we gain momentum into the scene. So let me pull up the prologue to West Side Story. Awesome. Very good. So like I said, West Side Story is a Romeo and Juliet story. So one of the most important moments that happens within Shakespeare, and of course also West Side Story, is going to be the moment where Romeo meets Juliet. So the Sharks and the Jets are of competing groups. In order to attempt making amends, there is some sort of social gathering between the two of them, a dance that's coordinated, and that is where Tony, Romeo, meets Maria, Juliet. There's some really nice things that happen in this scene in terms of moving music from the diegetic boundary, meaning music that's happening within the world of the film or the stage production, to the non-diegetic boundary, meaning it's underscoring something. They're at in a gym where they're supposed to be dancing. So of course they can hear the music that they're supposed to be dancing to. Yet at moments there, it's very clear that the music is moving into a different space where it's not just source music. So let's check out this gym dance scene and the moment where Tony meets Maria. Excellent. Now, that's a great scene. I love the movement of diegetic to non-diegetic back to diegetic, and the idea of foreshadowing her leitmotif that is going to be the song that he sings to her. So without further ado, let's skip to our last little section that we'll listen to of West Side Story, and that is Tony singing Maria, which is her leitmotif, and very iconic because it includes the tritone, that very dissonant interval that eventually resolves. So it's conflict and resolution all in one musical moment. Very well done. Here we go. Let me cue it up for you. So West Side Story, if you haven't seen it, I can't recommend it enough. You do have a concert report coming up. Unfortunately, I don't want you to watch the filmed version of it. The whole point of the assignment is to watch something that's actually a part of like multidiscipline theater. However, there are definitely versions of West Side Story online. I don't know if Broadway has released their archival footage. I believe it's also or at least there were plans to do it relatively soon. We'll see what happens there. But one of its great claims to fame is the fact that like the instrumental music alone is really, really satisfying, and all of the musical, the instrumental moments really do play into leading up to a particular song or song number, or leading out of it and transitioning away and into a different plot point. And it's really particularly well crafted in West Side Story. The plot used, obviously being a retelling of Romeo and Juliet, is something we're very familiar with. A great story, very tragic. And again, if you don't know it, I couldn't recommend it enough. So be sure to check it out. West Side Story doesn't end the tradition of filming musicals, but at least like past the 1950s, movie houses and bigger companies were a little bit less willing to pour money into musicals and into filming them unless they were for sure going to make a lot of money. That's obviously like impacted some more recent things, like La La Land, for example. That was fairly recent. It's a musical. We also have like Grease that happens in the 80s. Speaking of the 80s, we're going to turn our attention to, I'm going to talk about two different operas in the last section, and that is the idea of the mega musical. That is examples like mostly things that have Andrew Lloyd Webber's name on them, like Cats, for example, or we're going to check out Phantom of the Opera. But like things like Wicked fall into this category, or even a majority of things that are on Broadway now. Wicked is included. Oh gosh, I was just Lion King. Any of the Disney remakes that are done on Broadway are huge expenditures of money. These sort of like what I call like the blockbuster films of music theater. So we're gonna that's a trend that starts certainly after West Side Story, and I think Phantom of the Opera, which is the longest running musical, it has been going since it opened in the 80s. Is kind of a testament to how popular that kind of aesthetic kind of quality is in a theatrical performance. In a way, it's just like the up-to-date version of what they were doing in the 1920s and 30s anyway. This like unbelievable cast of people, just like the amount of people that were also used in each of these productions was huge, huge, huge. From the orchestra to the cast to the people who are running things behind the scenes, it was incredible. In any event, we're going to turn our attention to the Phantom of the Opera, and then we're going to tie off our discussion talking a little bit about Hamilton. So I will see you for our final installment in the next section. See you guys soon.